The rain hammered against the penthouse windows, each drop a tiny accusation against the fragile peace I'd tried to build. My cashmere scarf, a gift from my boss, felt like a noose around my neck, and my fingers, usually nimble over the complex code I wrote, throbbed with a dull ache. I couldn't remember the last time I'd savored a meal, and my spine felt like a rusted contraption, protesting every move. All I craved was the quiet oblivion of my bed, a temporary escape from the relentless demands of my job as a lead software engineer, and the 2 more critical bug fixes due by Friday. But rest wasn't a luxury in my life. My home wasn't a sanctuary. It was another battleground. My feet, encased in designer heels that pinched with every step, moved automatically towards the bus stop. My mind, however, was miles away, a frantic kaleidoscope of overdue bills, the astronomical cost of Liam's experimental physical therapy, and the specialized protein shakes he'd run out of days ago. I kept forgetting to pick them up. I kept forgetting a lot of things. When I finally reached our sprawling apartment in downtown Manhattan, the silence was deafening. Not peaceful, not comforting, just hollow. It was the kind of silence that echoed with the unspoken truth. No one noticed or cared whether I walked in or didn't. Liam was in his usual spot, sprawled in the custom-built recliner in the living room, eyes glued to the massive flat-screen television, the volume barely a whisper. "Hey," I said, shrugging off my soaked trench coat, trying desperately not to leave a trail of water on the polished hardwood floors. "Hey," he mumbled without even a flicker of acknowledgement in his direction. Same flat tone, same dismissive response, same suffocating evening. Every evening. I trudged to the state-of-the-art kitchen and filled the kettle, the rush of water the loudest sound in the entire apartment, a stark contrast to the quiet devastation within me. Once, Liam had been a man forged of steel and fire. He'd loved the open road, the thrilling unpredictability of his life as an extreme sports videographer, chasing adrenaline junkies across continents. He used to call me from remote mountain passes, his voice alive with excitement, describing a sunrise over the Grand Canyon or a white-knuckle storm that nearly sent his camera drone spiraling into the abyss over the Himalayas. But years of reckless living, compounded by a disregard for his own physical well-being, had finally caught up with him. A catastrophic fall during a base-jumping shoot had left him with chronic nerve damage and a grim prognosis from the best neurosurgeon's money could buy. The doctors told him his career was over, that he needed to find a less physically demanding path. He told them to go to hell, his eyes still blazing with a defiance that I had once found so attractive. When the disability papers came through, it was his mother, Evelyn, who orchestrated it all. Evelyn, with her steely resolve and endless connections, pulled every string she had, called in every favor. "He can't work anymore," she declared with an air of finality that could silence a roaring crowd. "He needs constant care. And you, Anna, you're his wife. That's your sole purpose now. Support him." I worked 80 hours a week. I meticulously planned every gluten-free, dairy-free, sugar-free meal. I paid every exorbitant medical bill, filled every obscure prescription. I skipped lunches, sometimes even dinners, so our daughter, Maya, could have the latest coding robot or art supplies she needed for her advanced classes. I even pawned the antique engagement ring my grandmother had given me when we couldn't afford Maya's specialized tutoring. I made gourmet-looking casseroles out of organic spinach and a fervent, desperate hope. And still, Evelyn called every single week, her voice dripping with thinly veiled contempt, to remind me that I was fundamentally failing. "He looks thinner, Anna," she'd purr, her words like tiny daggers. "Perhaps cook him something fresh once in a while. A real woman takes pride in her kitchen, you know." I bit my tongue so hard I tasted blood, a metallic tang of unspoken frustration. Liam never defended me. Sometimes he'd nod along, a silent accomplice to his mother's verbal assaults. More often, he just scrolled through his expensive new phone, oblivious to the insidious dissection of every single flaw Evelyn meticulously catalogued. I stopped expecting gratitude. I stopped expecting anything at all. 2 years ago, my manager, David Miller, a quiet, observant man with kind eyes, pulled me aside with a gentle, almost hesitant smile. "Anna, you're outworking everyone on the floor," he said, his voice laced with genuine concern. "You need a break. You've earned it and then some." He handed me a glossy brochure for a company-sponsored wellness retreat. Serene mountain vistas, private yoga sessions, gourmet organic meals, a week of pure, unadulterated peace. I stared at the pages as if they were written in a language I had forgotten how to decipher. Then I heard myself ask, Could I give this to my husband instead? David looked genuinely surprised, but he nodded. If it'll help him recover, sure. Anything for a valued team member. So I meticulously packed Liam's bag. I wrote out his intricate supplement schedule, printed out detailed maps of the retreat grounds, called the resort to make special dietary requests for his obscure allergies. And when he came back, looking more sullen and resentful than relaxed, he tossed the thoughtful gift basket into the trash with a contemptuous sneer. "Total waste of time," he muttered, his voice laced with the familiar bitterness. Nothing worked. Just a bunch of overpriced aromatherapy candles. But I hoped. I clung to that sliver of hope, like a drowning woman to a piece of driftwood. I told myself, maybe next year he'll try harder. Maybe he'll learn a new skill. Maybe he'll want to get better. Instead, he stopped asking me about my grueling workdays. He conveniently forgot our anniversaries, even the significant ones. He never noticed when Maya brought home a glowing report card from her gifted program, or when I secured a major promotion that came with a hefty bonus. He consistently dismissed my career, calling my groundbreaking work cute little coding games. Meanwhile, I was the one keeping us afloat, a solitary sentinel against the rising tide of bills and despair. That night, as the kettle shrieked its boiling protest, I stood at the sink, staring blankly at the condensation fogging the windowpane. My reflection stared back, tired beyond words. Not just physically, but spiritually. I didn't recognize the haunted woman in the glass anymore. My phone buzzed softly on the counter. A message from David. "Are you absolutely sure about your answer? The London office position is still open. They're looking for someone exactly like you." I didn't answer. Not yet. I turned off the kettle, the sudden silence jarring, and walked into the living room. Liam was still ensconced in his throne-like recliner. Maya's favorite unicorn plushie lay crumpled on the armrest. He hadn't even bothered to fold it, hadn't even noticed she'd left it there. I sank onto the edge of the plush sofa, the fabric feeling alien beneath me, and whispered to myself, a desperate, silent plea. This can't be the whole story. This can't be the end of me. 3 years ago, when Liam's diagnosis was still a fresh, gaping wound, and Evelyn's voice still rang with an almost terrifying certainty, I'd meticulously memorized every prescription in our medicine cabinet. I read side effect warnings like sacred scripture. I rearranged the kitchen shelves so he wouldn't have to bend down. I stopped buying any foods that might irritate his delicate stomach. I started cooking like I was competing on a high-stakes cooking show, with half the ingredients, zero time, and all the judgment in the world looming over me. And yet, Evelyn still called, her voice an endless loop of criticism. "He's lost weight, Anna," she'd declare, as if his physical state was a direct indictment of my worth. "A man needs warmth, care, a real home-cooked meal once in a while. What exactly do you do when you come home, dear?" I'd stand there, gripping the phone until my knuckles were white, biting back retorts that I knew, deep down, wouldn't make a shred of difference. Liam never intervened. Sometimes he'd nod, a silent, complicit agreement. Sometimes he just stayed quiet, fiddling with his phone or lazily flipping the channel, as if it wasn't his life his mother was scrutinizing. As if it wasn't mine she was systematically dismantling, piece by agonizing piece. I stopped crying about it. Instead, I worked more, stayed later at the office, cut back on our already tight grocery budget, and applied for 2 side gigs I could squeeze in remotely on weekends. I told myself it was just a temporary season, just until he got better, just until the old Liam returned. But he never got better. He never even tried. Around that time, David had noticed. He didn't say much at first, just quietly left a steaming cup of my favorite artisanal coffee on my desk when I arrived early, or asked if I needed help running complex data sheets. One late Friday afternoon, as the office lights dimmed and everyone else rushed out for their happy hour escapades, he leaned over the divider between our desks, his voice low and concerned. "Anna, you haven't taken a single day off in 2 years. That's not sustainable." I forced a brittle smile. "Vacation isn't really an option right now, David." He raised a single eyebrow, his gaze unwavering. "It should be. You've earned it." The following week, he slid another brochure across my desk. A luxurious spa retreat, secluded cabins nestled in the tranquil Californian redwoods, eucalyptus steam rooms, restorative yoga classes, fully company-sponsored. Go, breathe. You give us everything. Let us give something back. I stared at the page for a long, silent moment. Then I said, my voice barely a whisper, "Would it be possible to send my husband instead?" David looked surprised again, but he didn't push. "If you think it would help him." So, I packed Liam's bag again, the familiar ritual already weighing heavily on my soul. I painstakingly wrote out his medication times, printed detailed directions, emailed the resort about his highly specific diet, and when he came home, he summarily dumped the complimentary aromatherapy lotions and bath salts into the trash, muttering, "Bunch of nonsense. They don't understand real pain." He never said thank you. He never asked if I'd been okay while he was gone, if I'd managed the bills, or helped Maya with her daunting science fair project. And yet, I kept doing it. I sent him every single year, sacrificing my own much-needed breaks, while I stayed behind, working through blinding migraines, managing the ever-growing stack of overdue bills, and listening to Evelyn scold me like I was some clueless teenager who'd stumbled into marriage too young. There was one particular night etched into my memory with painful clarity. Liam was asleep, his mouth slightly agape, the recliner tilted just enough that his breathing rasped, a grating sound that always grated on my nerves. Maya was coloring quietly in her room, lost in her own vibrant world. I sat at the sleek kitchen island, nursing a mug of lukewarm chamomile tea, staring out into our postage stamp-sized backyard. The expensive solar-powered porch light flickered erratically, as if it couldn't decide whether it wanted to live or die. And I asked myself something I had never dared to consider before. What if he never changes? What if this isn't a phase? What if this is it? I hated myself for even allowing the thought to surface. I felt like a monster, a terrible wife, a contemptible coward. I scolded myself, whispering back the familiar mantras. He's hurting. He needs time. You made vows. But the question, once unleashed, refused to leave me. It planted deep, tenacious roots within my weary soul. The next year, when David mentioned the London assignment, a lucrative 6-month R&D contract, full relocation support, significantly higher pay, and the incredible chance to bring Maya, I barely let him finish before I instinctively shook my head. "I can't," I said, my voice hollow. He nodded, ever respectful. "If you ever change your mind, Anna, let me know." I walked home that evening in the relentless rain, the downpour mirroring the storm brewing within me. Liam actually noticed I was early, a rare occurrence. Maya had, predictably, done her homework alone. The dishes were piled high in the sink, a monument to Liam's self-proclaimed helplessness. And still, I stood at the stove, forcing myself to cook something warm, because that's what good wives, real women, were supposed to do. Later that night, as I sat on the cold floor, folding endless piles of laundry, Maya padded into the room, her small voice cutting through the suffocating silence. "Mom," she asked, her eyes wide and innocent, "are you happy?" I froze. My hands stopped moving, the soft fabric of a t-shirt clutched in my numb fingers. I couldn't meet her gaze. I lied. I said yes, because that's what I thought mothers were supposed to say. But deep down, something had irrevocably cracked open, and I couldn't shake the suffocating feeling that life was moving inexorably forward, somewhere far beyond my reach, and I was simply too exhausted to chase it. It happened on a Wednesday. I hadn't planned to come home early, but the migraine had escalated into a blinding, incapacitating throbbing behind my eyes. David, ever perceptive, noticed it before I even uttered a word. "Go home, Anna," he said gently, his voice filled with genuine concern. "Log in later if you can, but please, get some rest." I nodded weakly, gathering my things, my heart thrumming with a painful mixture of physical agony and the familiar guilt of leaving unfinished work behind. When I stepped into the apartment, the silence was absolute. The kind of quiet that used to feel like a welcome refuge, but now simply felt like an insurmountable distance between Liam and me. Liam glanced up from the couch as I mechanically removed my shoes. "Maya's headphones came," he said flatly, his eyes already drifting back to the screen. "Delivery guy's downstairs waiting for them." I was about to go grab him. I didn't answer, just nodded, watching as he shuffled towards the elevator in sweatpants and worn sneakers. He didn't look like someone struggling to move. His back didn't arch with pain. His step wasn't slow or halting. I watched him until the elevator doors glided shut, then turned towards the kitchen, a desperate thirst for water, maybe some soothing herbal tea, perhaps just the blessed silence. What I definitely didn't need was a sink overflowing with dishes. But that's precisely what greeted me. Cereal bowls crusted with dried milk, a glass with a sticky ring of orange pulp, a plate with congealed pasta sauce. Maya had left in a hurry for school that morning, and Liam never washed a dish if I was home to do it. I sighed, rolled up my sleeves, and turned on the faucet. The water pressure had been finicky for weeks, but today it surged out with an almost violent force, as if it had a point to make. It splashed furiously against the stack of plates and sprayed a fine mist across the sleek granite counter. I reached for the sponge just as a few errant droplets hit Liam's new phone, lying face up near the sink. It was the latest model, a top-of-the-line smartphone. I'd bought it for him just 2 days earlier for his birthday, saving meticulously for months in secret. He hadn't even bothered to thank me. The phone vibrated once, then the screen lit up. A voice message began to play automatically through the speaker, startling me with its sudden intrusion. At first, I didn't even register what I was hearing. Then Evelyn's voice cut through the air, sharp and utterly unmistakable. "I told you, Liam. I don't like this idea of Chloe moving in while Anna's still there. It's messy. She's going to figure it out, mark my words." Chloe. My hands froze, slick with dishwater, the sponge hanging limp in one of them. Without even thinking, my fingers fumbled for the phone. I unlocked it. He hadn't changed the code. The same 4 digits he always used, the numbers of our wedding anniversary. I tapped into the messaging app. Dozens of voice memos. Between him and his mother. Dozens. Some going back weeks, some only days. My hands trembled violently as I tapped on the previous one. Liam's voice filled the kitchen. Casual, almost playful. "Mom, Chloe's different. She gets me. She doesn't nag. She doesn't guilt-trip me. She actually listens. I'm done with this martyr act Anna keeps playing." My blood ran cold as I heard the next words. "I convinced her not to take the London offer. She thinks it's her own choice. But once she's out of the country, it's just me and Chloe. She'll keep sending money. Guilt's good for that. And Maya doesn't need to know anything. She's too young to understand." I dropped into the nearest chair, my legs suddenly unable to support my weight. My knees buckled beneath me. The kitchen blurred around me, a chaotic swirl of color and light, as if someone had taken my meticulously ordered world and twisted it a full 90 degrees. I couldn't hear anything but his voice. That smug, calculated tone, as if I were nothing more than an inconvenient obstacle, an ATM, a mere function in their grand scheme. I kept listening, compelled by a morbid curiosity. Another message. Evelyn again, her voice laced with a predatory warning. "She's always thought she's better than us, Liam. But you listen to me. If Anna finds out you've been faking this pain and letting Chloe live there, she'll blow it all up. Your disability claim gone. Your future gone. You think the state won't look into it?" And then Liam again. his voice oozing with a chilling arrogance. Relax, Mom. We're not idiots. Anna's too busy playing Florence Nightingale to notice anything. She's not going to London, remember? And if she does, great. Then she's out of the way and Chloe and I can finally have a normal life. Plus, if she files for divorce from overseas, I can probably get a chunk of the apartment, maybe even support payments. I'm the disabled one, remember? That last sentence hit me harder than any physical blow, not because it was merely cruel, but because it was utterly, meticulously deliberate. They had planned this. All of it. My endless sacrifices. My aching back from carrying the weight of our lives. My crippling insomnia. None of it mattered. I was just a pawn in their twisted game. They'd been moving me around on a chessboard, too exhausted, too blind to realize I'd never been a queen. I didn't cry. Not then. I just sat there, gripping the edges of the stool, feeling my fingertips go numb, my stomach roiling as if I might be violently ill. But deeper than that, somewhere beneath the initial, crushing shock, a small, steady voice emerged from the depths of my being. Leave. Now. Before I knew it, I was standing. I walked to the hallway, my movements precise and unhurried, picked up my phone and scrolled to David's contact. I hit call. He answered immediately, his voice professional, yet tinged with a hint of concern. Aina? I breathed once. A deep, cleansing breath. I'm going, I said, my voice surprisingly steady, firm. London. I'm taking the offer. There was a brief pause, a moment of surprised silence. Then his voice, calm and solid, resonated through the phone. Good. We'll finalize everything in the morning. I hung up. I didn't go back to the kitchen. Didn't clean the dishes. Didn't finish the tea I had meant to make. I just stood there in the dim hallway, listening to the apartment settle around me like a house I no longer belonged in. I wasn't Anna Vance, the dutiful wife of a sick man. I was someone else now. Someone irrevocably waking up. I didn't pack in anger. I didn't throw clothes into suitcases or slam drawers the way people do in movies when they finally snap. No, I folded Maya's favorite unicorn pajamas, her softest sweaters, like I always did, with meticulous care. I made a detailed checklist in my notebook. I confirmed our flights, printed the itinerary, and emailed Maya's new school in London near the embassy. Every movement was quiet, precise, deliberate, because this time I wasn't running from something. I was choosing something. I was choosing myself. When I told Liam, he blinked at me from his recliner as if I had suddenly begun speaking in a foreign language. You're taking the job now, he scoffed, his voice laced with disbelief. I nodded, my gaze unwavering. Yes. He paused the television, a remote still clutched in his hand. You said no. You said it didn't feel right. I changed my mind, I stated simply. He laughed, a hollow, disbelieving scoff that always made my skin crawl. That's just perfect. Go ahead, leave. Let's see how long you last over there without me doing everything for you. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. He didn't know yet that I had already filed the papers with my divorce attorney. 2 days after we landed in the bustling, vibrant heart of London, I sat across from a sharp, elegant British-American attorney named Eleanor Vance, her office overlooking the Thames. She was graceful and razor-sharp, the kind of woman who could silence a courtroom with a single, perfectly delivered sentence. We'll file for divorce from here, she explained calmly, her voice crisp and assured. The apartment, custody of Maya, all of it. We'll handle everything through international agreement. It's not uncommon. I nodded, my resolve hardening. Do it. Outside her office window, the iconic London Eye shimmered in the morning sun, a symbol of endless possibilities. It felt like breathing for the first time in years. The apartment David's team had arranged for Maya and me was modest but incredibly warm. 2 small, cozy bedrooms, a tiny balcony overlooking a charming little bakery that opened its doors at 6 a.m., sharp, every single day, filling the air with the intoxicating scent of fresh croissants. Maya started school near the embassy, and to my immense surprise, She adjusted faster than I did. Within a week, she had made new friends, had endless stories about her quirky teachers, and shared hilarious jokes about how British math was weird but kind of fun. I caught her laughing again. Really laughing. The kind of unrestrained, joyful laughter that reached her eyes, making them sparkle with genuine happiness. And I was working. God, was I working? But it wasn't the soul-crushing, draining work I had become accustomed to. I was leading innovative software projects, contributing groundbreaking ideas in meetings, building something tangible that had my name on it, something I was passionately proud of. For once I wasn't invisible. And David was there. He never pushed. He never pried. He just showed up quietly, kindly. We'd walk home together after late meetings, the London streets buzzing with energy. Sometimes he'd bring delicious pastries from a hidden patisserie or 2 steaming cups of espresso from the corner cafe. Sometimes he'd say nothing at all, and that comfortable, unspoken silence was the safest, most healing space I had known in years. One night, we sat on a bench near the river, the twinkling lights of the city reflected in the dark water. The distant Houses of Parliament shimmered in the moonlight, and Maya had just fallen asleep after meticulously finishing a drawing she titled Mom's New World. I remember the way the cool night wind felt against my face that night. Light. Forgiving. David looked at me, his gaze not filled with pity or caution, but with a profound presence. "You're different here, Anna," he said softly. I smiled, a soft, tired smile that reached my eyes for the first time in ages. "I think I'm just remembering." "Remembering what?" he prompted gently. "That I exist." That was the night I knew, with a fierce, unwavering certainty, that I would never go back. Not even if Liam begged, pleaded, or swore he'd changed. Not even if Evelyn showed up with crocodile tears and an apology meticulously rehearsed in front of a mirror. They didn't call me for weeks. Then the threats began. Emails from Liam, filled with vitriol and accusations. Voicemails from Evelyn, her voice dripping with venom. "You abandoned your husband. You'll regret this. You owe us. You're destroying your family." But they didn't know I had already turned everything over to Eleanor. And Eleanor was surgical. "We're prepared to present comprehensive financial records," she stated in a curt, official letter to Liam's attorney. "If your client wishes to claim disability as leverage for spousal support, the court will require irrefutable evidence, including recent communications, that may suggest otherwise." It worked like a charm. Suddenly, Liam stopped responding to his attorney's calls. 3 days later, he signed the divorce papers, a whimper instead of a roar. But of course, he still brazenly demanded his full portion of the apartment, despite contributing nothing. And that's when Eleanor made her brilliant second move. She submitted irrefutable documentation proving that I had paid every single mortgage installment, every single repair, every single tax, for the entire duration of our marriage. Liam had contributed precisely nothing, not even utilities. If he wanted half the proceeds, he'd be legally obligated to repay his half of the debt. And just like that, his grand share of the apartment dissolved into a cold, hard ledger of numbers, facts, and financial obligations he had never imagined would matter. The apartment sold. I walked away with more than enough to comfortably cover Maya's private school tuition for the next 3 years. Liam walked away with less than $1,000. And I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel victorious in the way I once thought I would. I felt clean. Like someone had finally scrubbed away the years of insidious manipulation, the suffocating silence, the crushing weight of guilt. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need fire. All I needed was distance, and I had finally, bravely, given it to myself. I didn't hear much about Liam for a while after the divorce. The last communication was a vague, bitter email titled, "Hope you're happy now," full of half-baked accusations and one particularly pitiful line that stuck with me longer than it should have. "You destroyed our family." As if there was anything left to destroy. As if he hadn't been the one chiseling away at it, brick by agonizing brick, every time he lied, manipulated, or sat back in complacent silence while his mother systematically turned me into a glorified maid with a paycheck. Still, a small part of me wondered where he'd go. I figured he'd end up back with Evelyn. She always swore she'd do anything for her good boy, her brave soldier, as if faking disability and emotionally starving his wife were acts of nobility. And I was right. He did go to her. But from what I heard through the grapevine, it didn't last. He showed up at her meticulously manicured doorstep with a half-zipped duffel bag and a cheap-wheeled suitcase. She let him in, of course she did. But the woman who answered wasn't the same enabling Evelyn I'd known. She was tired, too old to carry his colossal sense of entitlement anymore, too utterly done with the elaborate delusions she had so carefully helped him build. At first, she gave him the guest room, a grand gesture of maternal duty. But she didn't cook for him. She didn't stock his favorite obscure snacks. She didn't ask how he was sleeping, from what a mutual acquaintance later told me. She barely spoke to him at all. After a few weeks, she started pointedly locking the refrigerator at night. "You eat like a teenager, Liam," she snapped, her voice devoid of its usual syrupy sweetness. "You don't bring in an income. You don't clean. What am I supposed to do? Go broke feeding a grown man?" I should have felt something when I heard that. Pity maybe, or a profound sense of satisfaction. But mostly, I felt nothing at all. Liam tried to find work, or so I was told. But after so many years off the grid, his professional resume had gaping holes large enough to fall into. No recent references, no up-to-date certifications. He hadn't even bothered to keep up with basic industry skills. So, he took the only job he could get: manual labor, construction, hauling heavy concrete, lifting steel beams, tasks that made his already damaged back scream by noon. But now, there were no more sympathetic doctors to write notes, no more clever lawyers to bluff, no more wives to tirelessly carry him. It was just him, the merciless force of gravity, and the crushing consequences of a story he'd meticulously written for himself. Meanwhile, Evelyn stopped returning his calls during the day, and at night she would deliberately mute the television when he walked into the room, a silent, pointed dismissal. Eventually, she started telling mutual acquaintances, "He's not my problem anymore." From what I know, Liam now lives in the tiny, windowless back room of her duplex, a space that used to be solely for storage. There's a single, bare mattress on the floor and a cracked lamp. He's desperately asked a few old friends for money, but no one has answered his calls. People remember things. They remember what kind of man he was when life handed him a woman who would have walked through fire for him. And he chose, with deliberate cruelty, to sit and warm his hands while she burned. Back in London, my life had grown quieter, but also infinitely fuller. Maya was thriving beyond my wildest dreams. She'd made a diverse group of friends, joined an after-school coding club, and even started a delightful little blog about the weird and wonderful things she discovered in British grocery stores. She didn't ask about her father. Not anymore. One evening, as we sat on our tiny balcony, the city lights twinkling around us, she leaned her head on my shoulder and whispered, her voice soft and knowing, "You're happier here, aren't you, Mom?" I didn't lie this time. "Yes," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "I am." She smiled and nodded, as if that simple, honest answer gave her silent permission to be happier too. And David? He remained steady, present, a quiet, reassuring presence in my new life. He never tried to save me, which is probably why I felt so incredibly safe around him. There was a profound gentleness to him that didn't ask for anything in return. We'd walk through the labyrinthine side streets of London after dinner, and he'd point out things most people ignored. A beautifully carved lintel on an ancient building, a secret rooftop garden bursting with color, the faint, sweet scent of lavender blooming defiantly in a tiny crack in the pavement. He didn't need me to be anyone but myself. That, more than anything, taught me what real love was supposed to feel like. Not duty, not fear, not the kind of self-sacrificing endurance that left me utterly empty, but stillness, ease, and unwavering trust. One night, after walking me home from work, David paused at the door to my building. He looked at me, not with expectation, but with a quiet, hopeful tenderness. "When you're ready," he said softly, his voice a gentle caress. "I'd like to take you somewhere. Just the two of us. Doesn't have to be far, just away. Somewhere that's entirely yours." I didn't answer him then, but I remember feeling the profound warmth of that offer deep in my bones, like something I didn't even know I needed had finally, gloriously arrived. For years, I'd measured love by how much pain I was willing to endure. Now, I was slowly, tentatively, learning a different formula. Love, it turned out, didn't need to hurt. It just needed to be real. It hit me one crisp London morning while I was folding Maya's school uniform, the steam still curling lazily off my coffee mug. The quiet had changed. When I first arrived in London, silence had felt terrifying, like a vast, empty void where the relentless demands and suffocating guilt used to reside. Now, it felt like a deliberate pause, a deep, restorative breath, a precious gift. I hadn't heard Liam's voice in over 2 months. No venomous emails, no threatening voicemails, no more desperate attempts at manipulation. Evelyn had gone silent too. The last I heard, she'd acidly told a nosy neighbor. He made his bed. Let him lie in it. I imagined her sitting on her old threadbare recliner, arms crossed, stubbornly pretending she hadn't meticulously built that bed with her own 2 hands, stuffing it with a lifetime of lies and insidious manipulation. A small part of me thought I'd feel triumph, like this was my grand, satisfying moment of revenge. But I didn't want revenge anymore. I wanted peace. And more than that, I wanted to forget what it felt like to beg for the bare minimum and, in my desperate delusion, call it love. David came by that evening. He brought a good bottle of red wine and a warm, crusty loaf of fresh bread from the local market. Maya had gone to a sleepover with her new friends, so it was just the two of us. We sat on the tiny balcony, the London sky melting into a breathtaking tableau of violet and ash. He didn't say much. He never did when I was lost in thought, consumed by the echoes of my past. That was what I loved about him most. He let silence exist. He trusted it in a way most people feared it, filling it with unspoken understanding. After a while, I turned to him, my gaze direct and vulnerable, and asked, "Did you ever think I was weak for staying as long as I did?" He looked at me, his eyes soft and clear, devoid of judgment. "No," he said gently. "I think you were exhausted. And still trying. So incredibly hard." I nodded slowly, a wave of profound relief washing over me. I think part of me wanted to be the kind of woman who fixes everything, who doesn't give up, who stays no matter what. "You were," he said, his voice firm. "And now you're the kind of woman who saved herself. Both are incredibly strong, Anna." That night, I cried for the first time in months, not out of sadness, but because someone had finally, truly said what I'd never let myself believe, that I wasn't broken, that I had been enough. Even when the people I loved most, the people who were supposed to protect me, had painstakingly convinced me I wasn't. I used to think love meant endless endurance, that staying in soul-crushing pain proved my unwavering loyalty, that if I just gave a little more, bent a little further, swallowed a little deeper, I'd finally be loved back in the way I so desperately craved. But the profound truth is, real love never requires you to disappear. Liam never hit me. He never screamed. He didn't have to. He made me invisible with 1,000 small, dismissive silences, 1,000,000 tiny, cutting dismissals. He made my genuine pain feel excessive, my bone-deep exhaustion feel dramatic, my hard-won accomplishments feel like pure, undeserved luck. He didn't need to physically break me. He just needed me to believe I wasn't whole to begin with. And for far too long, I did. But not anymore. The morning after that transformative conversation with David, I booked a weekend away. Just the two of us. A charming cottage nestled near the rolling lavender fields in Provence, France. I didn't ask for permission. I didn't need anyone's blessing or approval. I looked at Maya, who was happily sketching in her notebook, and said, "I'm going away for a few days, sweetheart." She smiled, her eyes sparkling with understanding. "With David?" I nodded, a small smile playing on my lips. "Good," she said, her voice filled with a wisdom beyond her years. "You laugh more when he's around, Mom." I almost cried again, but this time, it was from a profound wellspring of pure joy. We went. We didn't do anything extraordinary or extravagant. We read books on the sun-drenched porch. We cooked simple, delicious pasta together, the aroma filling the cozy cottage. We walked through endless fields of fragrant lavender in comfortable, companionable silence. One night, I sat in the soft grass, staring up at the inky canvas of the star-studded sky, and whispered quietly, "I didn't think this was possible." David reached for my hand, his touch warm and reassuring, and whispered back, "It always was." And I believed him, because I was no longer the woman who needed to be rescued. I was the one who got out. I was the one who said definitively, "Enough." I was the one who gave her daughter the most authentic, whole version of a mother who didn't cry in locked bathrooms or flinch at every phone notification, bracing for another wave of criticism. Now, when Maya laughs, it doesn't sound like relief. It sounds like pure, unadulterated joy. Now, when I look in the mirror, I see someone I would fiercely want my daughter to become. And when I think of Liam, if I think of him at all, I don't feel rage. I feel distance. Like a bad dream I finally, truly woke up from. Like a suffocating house I irrevocably moved out of. Like a name I simply stopped answering to. For years, I thought choosing myself meant failure. But now I know choosing myself was the most radical act of love I have ever done. Not just for me, but for the little girl who grew up unknowingly believing love had to hurt. And for the daughter who now knows, deeply and truly, that it doesn't. My name is Anna Vance, and this time I'm not going back. Ever.